The new World of Warcraft patch, Legacy of Arathor, is on the PTR at the moment, and it includes a brand new feature known as Lorewalking, where we get to revisit some old narratively significant quest lines with the help of everyone's favorite lorewalker, Cho. Now, even though these quest lines are mostly stories we've already played through before, Lorewalking adds new details, provides some additional context, and even introduces whole new quests. So before we get any further, some fair warning. This video is obviously going to contain some spoilers, so I'm just going to borrow something from Taliesin and Evertel and put up this red spoilerbot plushie when major spoilers are on screen. In other words, any new information, so that you know when to skip ahead if you're trying to avoid that sort of thing. If you don't even want to know which storylines are covered, well then, just remember to bookmark this video so you can come back to it later. So let's dive in. At the moment, Lorewalking provides a choice of 3 major storylines: the history of Xal'atath, the history of the Ethereals, and, surprisingly, the history of Arthas, the Lich King. The first 2 choices are obviously very relevant to the events we're dealing with at the moment. Xal'atath might be momentarily disadvantaged, but she remains a major threat. The Ethereals are also the ones who disadvantaged her by stealing the Dark Heart for reasons unknown, so obviously some knowledge about their history is important right now as well. It's also these 2 storylines which contain significant lore reveals, especially the story of Xal'atath, which has a whole new quest line revealing exactly how she came to be in the Blade in the first place. As I said, the history of Arthas surprised me. First, because Shadowlands made quite the point of closing the book on the Lich King's story. Yet here we are, revisiting it again. Admittedly, this one doesn't have any major new lore reveals or information, so it's possible the only reason the Lich King's story has been included in Lorewalking is because it's one of Warcraft's most significant stories, the type of song that belongs on any greatest hits album. So, Xal'atath's story begins with the Legion Shadow Priest artifact questline. It's pretty cool that Lorewalking allows you to play this questline on whatever character you want. Finally, I'll have a cool screenshot of Blood Bubbles wielding Xal'atath. Next, we revisit Xal'atath's story in Battle for Azeroth, how she gained her mortal form by possessing the body of a dead high elf, and then managed to free herself from the blade as part of a deal she made with N'Zoth. And again, this story is told from the Shadow Priest perspective, so there you go, it's canon that it was the Shadow Priest who helped free Xal'atath. This questline has also been the source of a great deal of speculation. No one knew for sure what deal this was. All we really knew is part of it involved leaving the blade with N'Zoth, and that he was killed with the help of the same blade shortly afterwards. I'm going to get more into that in a moment, but first, it's time for the first major spoilers of this video. The brand new quest line that shows how Xal'atath ended up in the Blade to begin with. According to Lorewalker Cho, this story comes from a stone tablet discovered in Stormsong Valley. It's taken years to translate, and it tells a story from the time of the Black Empire, when the old gods ruled Azeroth. Apparently, long before being defeated by the Titans, the old gods faced a very different threat.
This tablet is a record of a battle from long ago, when the Black Empire ruled all. The old gods sent all of their forces to Xal'atath to counter an unexpected attack from Xal'atath.
Xal'atath had sent an army of shadows to attack Xal'atath, and while the old gods don't usually like to work together, they put aside their differences in the face of this greater threat.
N'Zoth should have known Xal'atath would target Ny'alotha when she learned what he was building. Fortunately, our aid will leave him in our debt.
Xal'atath underestimates us. Her attempts to distract us have failed. Even we will work together when faced with such blatant betrayal.
Ny'alotha is an alternative reality where the Black Empire has been restored and the old gods rule Azeroth. Ny'alotha is mostly N'Zoth's thing, and during Battle for Azeroth, N'Zoth attempted to merge this reality with our own. though of course we put a stop to that. The horrific visions of Orgrimmar and Stormwind was part of that, so the fact that we'll be revisiting them soon feels more and more important. It's interesting that Y'Shaarj seems unsurprised that Xal'atath would attack Ny'alotha after learning what N'Zoth was building. Apparently, this particular future doesn't align with Xal'atath's own agenda. Back during Legion, one of Xal'atath's whispers referred to the old gods as her brethren and made a reference to something they did to her long ago, something she's still angered at.
We may face some of my brethren in this conflict, a prospect that delights me. Their power will be mine. They will pay for what was done to me long ago.
The Word of the Conclave, the priest Orderhall book about the history of the different artifacts, also included rumors about how the blade version of Xal'atath was made. There are many theories concerning the blade's creation. The more outlandish claim it is all that remains of a forgotten old god who was consumed by its kin in the early days of the Black Empire. Other theories state that Xal'atath is the claw of Y'Shaarj, ripped from the old god's monstrous form and bestowed upon its servants for use in ritual sacrifices. For a very long time, I have maintained Xal'atath was an old god who was betrayed by her brothers and imprisoned by them in the Blade. And, well, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. In the new questline, after summoning the other old gods, we get to witness them imprison Xal'atath in the Blade.
Eternally sealed. You shall only watch this world as it gains untold power without you. You shall never lay claim to it.
Eternally pathetic. You are mere pestilence, parading as lords. This is not the end of the game, only the beginning. And I have all eternity to play.
The last desperate cries of one who has witnessed the inevitable.
Now, here is where I have to admit some defeat. Alleria was right. Xal'atath is not the 5th old god. The 5th old god was, unfortunately, probably just Gahun, the Titan experiment from Battle for Azeroth. I hate it, but at this point the evidence is overwhelmingly that Xal'atath is...
something else. A survivor from the depths of time.
But for the first time, I think we do have an idea of what she is. Xal'atath is a Void Lord. At least, that's what she's planning to become. Gigantic beings of shadow that are theoretically at least as powerful as any Titan, Void Lords have always been a bit confusing in World of Warcraft's lore. Dimensius the All-Devouring consumed planets, destroyed the ethereal home planet of Koresh. But, as we can see for ourselves during the ethereal lorewalking, he was kinda easy to defeat. He wasn't even a raid boss. We killed him during a Burning Crusade quest. There are also Void Lords and Void Lords. Little Void Lords can be found everywhere. Even mortals can turn themselves into one with a ritual. But the monstrous entities composed of pure shadow energy type of Void Lords actually exist outside of our reality, and only the strongest Void Lords are able to manifest in the physical universe, weakened and only for a limited period of time. Dimensius was one of these greatly weakened forms. Xal'atath reinforced this with one of her whispers.
I long for the day our masters can truly pass into this realm. You have only seen fragments, shadows, the faintest of echoes. Ask the Ethereals what one of these manifestations is capable of.
Dimensius was a Void Lord. He consumed Koresh, which we now know contained a World Soul. He also attacked at least one other world that we know of. But by the time we encountered him, he was clearly quite weak. This may be because Void Lords must keep on consuming untold amounts of matter and energy in order to maintain their presence in reality. The longer Dimensius went without consuming a planet, the weaker he got. Because the Void Lords struggle so much to physically manifest in the physical universe themselves, they sent the old gods, and not just the ones we know on Azeroth, to crash randomly into planets in the hope of finding world souls that they could corrupt. Discovering a planet where the world soul had already been turned to the Void is what sent Sargeras over the edge. He was so disturbed by the threat, he decided it was better to end all life than to allow a Dark Titan be born. But they clearly sent more than old gods. Xal'atath speaks like an old god who is faithful to the Void Lords' vision. She longs for the day that they can truly manifest in reality, and she calls them her masters, while she calls the old gods her brethren. But she looks quite a lot like Dimensius, or like any other little Void Lord that we know and recognize. As Xal'atath says, the Void Lords in our realm are like fragments or echoes. And, as it happens, part of the questline to kill Dimensius involves gathering fragments of Dimensius from the little Void Lords who surround him. A lot of creation myths talk about mortals containing a spark of the divine, and I think we're dealing with something similar here, only obviously a much darker version. Maybe Void Lords aren't born, they're made. Maybe when one of these fragments successfully merges with a world soul, they become a Void Lord. If I'm right, Dimensius may have become a full Void Lord by claiming the world soul of Koresh. But afterwards he could only stay in our realm for so long. This is why he was so much weaker by the time we met him. One fun aspect of this theory is the fact that mortals can become mini Void Lords means potentially Dimensius was even originally a mortal. And, of course, this could all explain Xal'atath's own plans for our world soul. But for all of the Void Lords to truly pass into our realm, maybe they need even more power than just the world soul. Like, maybe they need the power of the prime world soul. Meanwhile, the old gods of our world do seem to have forgotten their purpose. Ny'alotha, N'Zoth's idea of utopia, doesn't show an awakened Azeroth transformed into a Void Lord. He's quite happy for Azeroth to stay asleep, controlled by the old gods, the way she was during the Black Empire. As Xal'atath says, they're only parading as lords. Xal'atath, on the other hand, has plans to claim Azeroth's power. She seeks to become a true Void Lord, just as Dimensius did, or she seeks to use Azeroth's world soul to help the Void Lords manifest in reality, or both. It's the prime world soul, there's a lot of potential there. There's one last bit of new information from this questline that I haven't mentioned yet. Before she was imprisoned in the Blade, Xal'atath struck a deal with N'Zoth, the same deal that we saw them reference when N'Zoth released her from the Blade many centuries later.
But that was not all Xal'atath said. The tablet states she whispered in a voice only N'Zoth could hear.
Consider what greatness could be yours if your siblings did not stand in your way. The offer stands. You need only reach out and claim it.
Maybe Xal'atath promised N'Zoth that when she's a Void Lord, he can still have his Ny'alotha. World Soul or not, N'Zoth just seems to want his nice, comfortable little Black Empire home. And, I mean, how can anyone fault him for that? N'Zoth just wants to be happy in his own little player home like the rest of us. Frankly, you're all just so mean for not allowing him that. Of course, N'Zoth did release Xal'atath from the Blade, and then immediately get killed by the same Blade after that, which makes him seem really bad at deals. But Lorewalker Cho himself even hints that we shouldn't be so quick to underestimate N'Zoth. There are those who would say that N'Zoth was the weakest of the old gods. A misconception perhaps, for research would indicate that N'Zoth was responsible for many of the troubles that plagued our world. It was N'Zoth who corrupted the Black Dragon Neltharion into Deathwing. N'Zoth who was responsible for twisting Queen Ashara and her highborn into the Naga. It is even said that N'Zoth helped craft the Emerald Nightmare. For a weak creature, N'Zoth was still a force to be reckoned with. A long-standing theory is that N'Zoth's plan was always to be killed by the Blade so that he could hide in it, the same way that Xal'atath was contained in it for so long. This would allow him to survive a battle he knew he couldn't avoid. It would also explain a lot about the blade itself. After Xal'atath gave the blade to N'Zoth, the next time we saw it was when a Horde champion found it, apparently discarded. They took it back to Sylvanas, who made a deal with Queen Ashara, who ended up giving it to Rathian to be used on N'Zoth. It was always straight up weird that N'Zoth apparently lost the blade after going through all that trouble to obtain it, unless he was the one planning this all along. Not to mention, no one's seen any sign of the blade since. There's also the fact that Ashara seems to have her own deal of some sort with Xal'atath, or at least is in on her plans. A Naga book discovered in the Forbidden Reach predicted a lot of the events that led to the war within, and it ends, when these things come to pass, the Harbinger will fulfill the final prophecy and complete the awakening. Only then shall our queen return to reign over sea and sky and earth. We must make ready. Rise, rise. Soon all that was hidden will be revealed. I mean, I'm not saying this is what happened, but if Xal'atath made a deal with N'Zoth that he would get his Black Empire back, and N'Zoth made a deal with Ashara that she would be allowed to rule as queen in this empire if she helps him convince the heroes of Azeroth that the blade was his doom instead of his salvation, then everything we've seen happen would make a lot of sense. Based on his deal with Xal'atath, it sounds like N'Zoth may have even had a hand, or a tentacle, in the defeat of every other old god. If any character from World of Warcraft's history has been shown time and time again to play 5D chess, this is it. N'Zoth is probably still alive and will come back. This questline does seem to be hinting quite heavily at that. Onto the Ethereal questline. As I said, we deal a bit with Dimensius himself during this one. First, Lorewalker Cho takes us to the Burning Crusade, where we join the Protectorate against the Ethereum. The Ethereum were once the ruling class of Koresh, but their desire for vengeance against Dimensius turned into an insatiable desire for power. When we ask Lorewalker Cho about Dimensius, he reminds us the Void Lord once attacked another planet, but Inaru gave their life to protect that one. Maybe that planet was Dimensius' first attempt at claiming a world soul. Maybe it was an attempt to stay manifested in reality, since Void Lords require vast amounts of matter and energy to do so. Dimensius the All-Devouring is a terrifying entity, a Void Lord that destroyed the ethereal homeworld of Koresh long ago. Little is known of how he first discovered Koresh, but the result was much the same as you see here. The world was rent asunder. Koresh was not the only place attacked by this being. A world called Karkua also suffered, but the Naru Tur arrived to protect it. Tur sacrificed its own life to save the world's inhabitants. Unfortunately, the Ethereals were not as fortunate. The Ethereals escaped Koresh and swore vengeance on Dimensius for what he had done, but that quest for vengeance would soon turn to darker pursuits. Either way, the Ethereum turned to the Void and became the first Void Ethereal that we know of.
Unthinkable, but true. The Ethereum was attempting to embrace the very same Void that had destroyed the ethereal homeworld so long ago. Their efforts had to be stopped.
During the Burning Crusade questline, we did our best to disrupt their efforts, but we also helped kill Dimensius. At least, we helped defeat the greatly weakened fragment that he was by then.
The Protectorate used the fragments of Dimensius to disable a conduit that gave Dimensius a link to the Void and physical immunity. Only then could they launch a final assault. It was done. Dimensius was defeated, though some questioned whether he was truly gone.
If Lorewalker Cho is making a point of telling us Dimensius might not truly be gone, then he's not truly gone. At least, that's how I read that one. In the next questline, Lorewalker Cho introduces us to Locust Walker, Aleria's mentor. He highlights the difference between this one Ethereal who is known to wield the powers of the Void without falling to its whispers, and the Shadow God, Void Ethereal, who, like the Ethereum, just allowed themselves to be lost to the Void. According to Cho, it seems as though Locust Walker is perhaps the only Void Ethereal who has not followed the path of corruption and destruction. That language, it seems, does kinda imply things aren't what they seem. Cho also tells us, Locust Walker's intentions do indeed seem to be good, though there are those who question both him and Ilaria to this day. So maybe this is hinting that Locust Walker should not be trusted. Or maybe this is a hint that there are actually other Ethereal who have managed to wield the void without falling to it. Cho never identifies the Ethereal who showed up in Undermine. He does mention the Shadow Guard are still at large though, so it's possible Ilaria was right and those Ethereal were Shadow Guard. Cho also doesn't ever mention Shadreen, which is very frustrating because seriously, what's going on with this Ethereal lady? The Ethereal questline continues surprisingly with the brokers, who are very similar to the Ethereal after all. A nomadic culture with bodies of pure energy divided up into cartels and a society that heavily emphasizes trade. Lorewalker Cho thinks it's really fascinating how similar these two cultures that we encountered in such different locations are. After all, we met the brokers in the Shadowlands, though we also learned they didn't come from there originally. He takes us through the introduction to Tazavesh, the Veiled Market, and some of the encounters we had with Venari, the mysterious broker who we befriended in the mall. And this is where the red spoiler bot plushie goes back up because we got the second set of biggest reveals in these questlines. Spoilers ahead, are you ready? The brokers are so similar to the Ethereal because they're from the same planet. Both are from Koresh. Cho wonders if they might even have been the same people.
The Ethereals and the brokers both hail from Koresh? Is it possible they were once one people? Oh, fascinating.
And they might have been. Personally, I think it's more likely that they were each a distinctive race while being similar enough to resemble each other, kinda like humans and elves. Oh, but that's not our only spoiler. We also learned that Venari and Locust Walker know each other. In fact, they go way back. Basically, what happens is, after Cho has been chatting to us about the brokers, Venari, who keeps track of any time her name is mentioned, sends another broker to ask us to deliver a package to Locust Walker. It's not explained why that broker can't go. After all, they even open a void portal for us to get there. That's right, a void portal. But the package turns out to be the same projection device Venari used to use to communicate with us in the mall. Now she's using it to chat to Locust Walker.
Oh, as I suspected. The Shadow Guard are after you as well?
I have not seen you since the destruction of our world, as I preferred it.
Such fangs, Locust Walker. You wound me. Yet unfortunate as it may be, it seems we must work together one last time. Come, we have much to discuss.
We don't get to hang about to hear what they talk about, but Void Ethereal assassins try to prevent the meeting, and Locust Walker does tell us it seems the Shadow Guard are determined to stop us from speaking. So there's another one for the these guys are the Shadow Guard camp. Either way, Venari and the Locust Walker having a love-hate relationship is something I couldn't be more excited to see. I'm also going to be a pain and remind everyone once again that Gallywix was seen making a deal with the brokers of Tazavesh during Shadowlands. And so while he may be dead, he also may already have allies waiting for him in the afterlife. Mind you, now that we know brokers and Ethereal are connected, maybe they're the ones who put Gallywix in touch with the Shadow Guard who put him in touch with Xal'atath in the first place. Last, and let's face it, kinda least, is the Lich King. As I said before, this one doesn't really reveal any new information. We get to witness a small part of Arthas's youth, his decision to destroy Strathholm, his journey to Northrend, and his decision to claim Frostmourne. We see him murder his father, his ascent to the Lich King, and are reminded there was no way to save him. Finally, we witness his final battle and death from his perspective in a way that's reminiscent of playing Illidan at the start of Legion. The difference is, Illidan's perspective allowed us to see he was fighting the Burning Crusade all along, while Arthas was just the evil monster we always thought he was. I did notice that someone is completely missing from Lorewalker Cho's retelling of the story. The jailer and his involvement isn't mentioned at all. It's not even like Cho is shying away from the Shadowlands. We just heard all about the brokers. But apparently they don't want our memory of this specific story to be associated primarily with the jailer anymore, and I think we can all be grateful for that. This story does, of course, take us to Northrend, which we will be revisiting in The Last Titan. It also makes a point of reminding us about the fact that Saronite, which is all over Northrend, is the blood of the old god Yogg-Saron. It's even called the Black Blood of Yogg-Saron by the Tuskarr. Icecrown is made of this stuff, and that has always been a really interesting aspect of Northrend. Saronite is known to have pretty much exactly the effect you'd expect from old god blood. People start to hear whispers that can turn them mad. In exploring Northrend, we learned that Yogg-Saron's influence still lingers in Northrend, even though he was defeated. Yogg-Saron is dead, but there's a lot of power in old god blood, as we know from the War Within. In the same way that maybe we shouldn't underestimate N'Zoth, maybe we shouldn't be underestimating Yogg-Saron, especially now. Oh, sorry, spoilers. Now that we know Yogg-Saron probably has a lot to be angry with both Xal'atath and N'Zoth about, it'd be especially interesting to see him make some sort of return, and the reckoning that could follow from that. Apart from everything else, lore walking is just fun. I mean, aside from the bit in the Lich King questline where they make you redo an entire very tedious dungeon, that could seriously be streamlined, Blizzard, but other than that, it's very much a good time. I loved revisiting these stories and getting Lorewalker Cho's perspective on them. I loved seeing the new lore. I think most of all, I like the way that these questlines sometimes fill in the gaps, showing us events that we previously only saw in books or in previous games like Warcraft 3. I'd love to follow some other major lore character stories, like maybe the history of someone like Vol'jin or Lillian Voss, or revisit lost storylines as well, like the Battle for Undercity. All in all, I think lore walking has the potential to be a remarkable success. 10 out of 10 Blizzard, no notes. I mean, except for that stupid dungeon thing. Okay, maybe 1 note. Oh, and wouldn't it be awesome if doing these quests awarded time walking badges? 2 notes. But that's all from me for now. If you enjoyed this video, remember you can like, subscribe, comment, share, all the good YouTube stuff. You can also find me on Patreon, where these wonderful people help to support the channel directly. Finally, you can find me on Twitch, where I'm always happy to talk about all things lore. So while that's all for now, hopefully I'll see you again soon.